and look and wonder marvelously, for I am working a work in your days that you will not believe, although it be told you. That's Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 5. I'll get back to that. Who would ever think about building a aircraft carrier in the northern mountains of Alberta, Canada, unless it were going to be made out of ice or something crazy like that? During World War II, the lifeblood of England was their naval fleets that they took from Canada over to Europe across the Atlantic. When they crossed the Atlantic, they could be protected by the aircraft as long as they were close enough to the land. The aircraft could protect them, go back, refuel, and come back and look over the ships. But when they got to a certain point in the Atlantic, the aircraft could not fly that far anymore, and it got known as the Mid-Atlantic Gap. Well, who hung out in the Mid-Atlantic Gap except for the German U-boats, U meaning underwater or submarines, and they just wreaked havoc on all of the fleets of England, and they needed to do something about it. Churchill decided that he needed to have some kind of a landing strip where he could have planes land somewhere out in the mid-Atlantic to protect his fleets. And he had a guy working for him in the headquarters of one of his departments, who under him was this little crazy scientist guy named Geoffrey Pike. Geoffrey Pike was known for being an inventor of many different projects, and some of them very far-fetched. But they put him on this project, and he came up with the idea of building a giant, floating, mobile, unsinkable landing strip of ice out in the mid-Atlantic. Pretty far-fetched idea. And the problem with that was that ice was unstable. Ice would crack and break, and it would melt and so on. He needed a way to strengthen the ice and to keep it better. He came up with a project, and they worked on some different things. You know, they tried different things, but he ended up with putting 14% wood pulp in the water and freezing it. And he ended up calling this solution pykrete. And this pykrete was extremely stable. It was like putting rebar in concrete. And so it made the ice stable. It helped it float better. They could shape it and mold it like wood and metal. It was easy. They could make it whatever size they want and pour it and freeze it in whatever sizes that they want. So he brought this pykrete in, and Lord Mountbatten took one chunk of ice and one chunk of pykrete into a big Quebec conference of generals and admirals, and he laid them down on the floor, and he pulled out his sidearm, and he shot the cube of ice, and it shattered into pieces. He then went over to the pykrete. He shot the pykrete. The bullet ricocheted off the pykrete, actually grazed the leg of an admiral, and got stuck in the wall. I don't know what they're doing shooting it inside a building. So there was support and belief that there was something to this. They could actually have a vessel that would be, and this would make it unsinkable because they could actually patch it in place, and the ice would float so the ship wouldn't sink or fill, and they could patch it, refreeze it, and make it stay in place. So in 1943, Churchill he commissioned a project for a prototype, 1/50th the size, to be built on Lake Patricia in Jasper National Park, way up in Alberta, Canada. And they used Patricia because it was remote. They had they had service people there who could work on it. Conscientious objectors were up there. And this vessel was 60 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 20 feet high. It took 8 men 14 days to build this vessel out of pykrete so they could study the reactions of that and so on, just how it went. Enter Project Habakkuk. Being that they actually built a vessel and it worked, they kept it floating all summer long on a 1-horsepower motor recirculating the refrigeration in this boat on the lake up in Alberta. The actual real model that they were going to build was really unusually large. This is my great photograph. I just blew it up and it's blurry, but this is a typical aircraft carrier And this is Project Habakkuk, made out of pipecrete. It was going to be 1,200 meters long. It was 180 meters wide. It could house 150 twin-engine prop planes that were either bombers or fighter jets. And it had a large flight deck, which you can see here. But this is basically a cutaway. They had the center hollowed out. On the outside, they had to insulate the ice so that it wouldn't melt as easy. So they had insulation. Basically, this was cork, so that it didn't bother. It helped the flotation. They had some really good ideas. So the cork helped it float, and inside of all of this, they had an elaborate system to circulate the refrigeration. So they had cork on the outside, framing on the inside of wood and metal, cork on the inside, and then the refrigeration, and they filled it up and froze it. What happened up there in Canada is they found out that the pipecrete it started to break down, and it would sag unless they could keep it at 3 degrees. So that was going to require more framing. Materials were hard to come by. This project had 300,000 tons of wood pulp, 25,000 tons of lumber, 10,000 tons of steel, and 25,000 tons of cork to build this vessel. During the process while they were doing this, they decided to get started on it, but they realized that the original cost was somewhere in the 750-pound range, and they got to about $2.5 million, and they realized it was getting very expensive to do this whole thing. What happened was the islands in Portugal, there's airstrips down there, and they gave them permission to use those airstrips. And so they were able to get closer to the mid-Atlantic range. They had gas tanks that were allowed longer range flight. So by the time they got ready to build Habakkuk, the costs were exorbitant, and they just cut it out and never did actually do it. They pulled the plug on the prototype in Lake Patricia up in Alberta, Canada, and it took 3 hot summers for that to finally sink to the bottom. And you can still go there today and go scuba diving to the bottom of Patricia Lake. And you can look at Project Habakkuk, and they put a plaque underwater. You can read about it when you're underwater. And there's one on the side of the lake when you go there that you can look at as you go by. I'm fortunate enough, I do my tours there in the summer, and I go by Patricia Lake, and I talk about Project Habakkuk, and people find it quite interesting. And if you've never been up into that part of the world, it's absolutely spectacular. I highly recommend you going. Thank you.